Lighter?
Yes.
Okay. That's good. Sound off. Who's all in? Criswell's in. Who else is in? We got 2:30.
Tonight's episode is going to be chocked full of information.
Oh, what's upper? What up, Sean Rats? Are you on industrial
on
as well?
Industrial. Do you want me to be on newbies?
No, I think if you're watching this on newbies, hop over to industrial.
Then we can see it.
Yeah, and you can share it from there.
Frank the Turk.
Let's go ahead and say this.
Sean Rats.
For those who watched last week, this is going to be substantially better than last week. I promise you.
We could literally not do a show, and it would be better than last week's.
It was impressively terrible last week. We understand it. Jerry Vaughn, what's happening, dog?
What's up, Jerry?
Kevin Ochoa, get on the way.
Robert Criswell's in.
140. Okay,
That's
so
in.
do you have your Tobacconist handbook
Yeah.
as a guide?
No, I don't need it. I got it memorized.
I don't know which direction you're going, though. I don't know exactly.
We're going to talk about flavors and how do I mean, because it'll work for we got literally several raging alcoholics in this group. They can utilize this for their alcohol.
You want to hand me that over there so I can at least have an idea where you're running off into left field to?
Yeah.
Kevin Ochoa, I want to watch last week so bad. No, you really
No,
don't.
you don't.
Trust me. It was it was like story time of stories you didn't want to watch. Tasting school. Oh, that would have been a great subject. Tasting school.
Sense.
Okay, go quick.
Taste.
Sight.
Hearing, sight, touch.
Oh, so we're just
feel.
going to run through it?
Then we're going to talk about heat. We're going to talk about, that's the main one, is the
5 tastes.
where you taste things on your
Umami
palate.
is a taste?
Umami is not a taste.
It's a sensation?
Umami is something that has its own unique flavor.
Oops.
Damn. Kid.
Unami. Or sabroso in Spanish. Andrew Casey, what's happening?
Trader's in.
Bobby Finn. What do we got? 23
Williams
seconds
in.
on my
KO is in.
side. KO's in? Man.
No, that's Ochoa. Never mind. It's
Kevin
the
Ochoa.
good Kevin.
Yeah, that Kevin. That's my favorite Kevin.
Yeah.
Ready? Or salsa in Spanish. 5.
I got a
5,
plethora of
4,
things that we can test,
3,
even though you can't taste anything.
2, 1. What's up?
What's up, newbies?
What's up to you? What's up, all you newbies out there? Jim Trader said that sounds bad. I don't know if the audio's bad or if it's all bad. But what day is it?
It's Tuesday.
What time is it?
7:30.
And where are we?
We are at ICC.
In the Lord Byron Room?
In the Lord Byron Room at Industrial Cigars in Frisco, Texas. And we are coming to you on
Live.
Cigar Newbies and on Facebook. And we are here to answer your questions.
That is a very good point. If you have any questions, regardless if it makes sense to what we're talking about or not, feel free to throw them out there.
Yep.
We are going to answer them for you. If you're on Cigar Newbies, we can't see it because we're both selfish and we're on the Industrial Cigar Company page. If you have something, kick it over on that side. All right.
So Jerry Vaughn is, he said the wind in Fort Worth right now is completely ruining his stogie and my buzz. So we could actually start with a little cigar tip.
I think you're right. And
tip of the day.
That's
on a
before
windy day.
we hop into this, which is a little bit from the Tobacconist Handbook.
Yeah.
So tip of the Dave today on our Tuesday.
Tip of the Dave, and this goes out to Jerry Vaughn, who is sitting out in the wind in Fort Worth. Sometimes you'll notice that your cigar in the wind will start burning like crazy on one side. So how do you fix that? You literally just, right now, if the wind's coming from this direction, it's coming around the cigar and it's accelerating over the other side. It's like that one wind tunnel test.
Okay.
Right? So just take that side that's burning faster and point that towards the wind and let that wind come fly around the other side and get it caught up. Right there. Boom.
Man,
Work your price per admission right there.
All right, and they're out. No, that's really solid.
We should end it on that.
How many times I've put that, so I put the running side on the opposite side, or the wrong way.
It's accelerating.
Yeah. Rodney Smith. Look, let's just stop here for a second while we have people on here. If you don't belong belong to Someone Say Whiskey. If you have not joined it, please go join it. Rodney Smith is king of all kings, Sir Dominus.
He is.
We have a really unique and cool project coming up. Dropping.
It's. I saw him last night, ready to take a bottle of OFC that apparently is like, you know, God's urine or something. And this dude was so excited about the video that you guys just got completed for something that's going to get released later this week.
Big shout out.
He was like ready to bash it.
That's so, no, it's just, we love working with great people and great opportunities. Huge shout out to Busy B. He's the guy that did a lot of the heavy lifting for that. But I'm telling you, Friday that video is going to drop about this barrel pick project.
Holy balls.
It is one of the cooler somethings I've ever been a part of. So I just want to say thank you. I wish I could show everyone right now. I know. I've watched the video 100 times, no less.
Yeah, it is. I watched it again today, and it is so good. It is so good.
It's a solid deal, and tonight we are running through Cigars 101. Please keep that open. Jerry Vaughn, In the Wind, How to Keep Your Buzz, Keep Drinking. That will help you on that side.
That'll just offset it. Perfect balance.
We
learned that from Someone Say Whiskey, by the way.
Let's hop in to a little bit of Cigars 101. If you're watching, please, on Facebook, give this a share.
Yep.
I do appreciate that. We have really solid information to go through tonight. And tonight we're talking about maximizing your senses or utilizing your senses in everything from Cigars Plus.
I noticed that when people apply to come into Cigar Newbies, we ask a series of questions. And a lot of the reasons that they're joining is to learn about taste. Learn about how to, hear people talking about different notes and things like that. And what this will do is kind of give you a little education on what's going on with your palate.
Yep.
The five senses. We'll talk a little bit about pH and how that affects things. And the more I've read and learned as we go through this process, to learn that there's like nicotine in tomatoes and green peppers and things like that.
There's nicotine in tomatoes?
Yes. Yeah.
You were shitting me.
No, it's crazy.
That is just one of the things I am excited about, to have our entire team become certified tobacconists.
Yep.
That is, man, I didn't know there's nicotine in tomatoes.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yep.
So as we're going through tasting school, we know we need to start igniting our senses. And for those who are smoking at home, those who maybe are going to fire up with us, we're talking to you, John Byers. Should we just break that down into some of the...
I think some of the things, and I notice it a lot, and in some cases I'll refer to the spirits crowd that's in there as well, because this does apply in all those areas. But there's those senses. There's seeing. There is just the process of looking at the cigar, looking at how the cigar is rolled, how sharp that edge is on the cut.
So what are some things, as you look at how it's rolled, what are some things that are going to tell you that, yes, I should continue on this, or maybe I should change this up and do something different?
Well, I think, now we have a series of really, really well-rolled cigars, and when you're dealing with, like, here we got Plasencia and more Plasencia branded cigars and Crux cigars that come from the Plasencia factory, which is a factory you've been to several times in Nicaragua. Probably the best farmer, maybe the best farmer in the world. Mm-hmm. They just do an absolutely incredible job. There's the process of aging tobacco and fermenting tobacco, and one of the things that was very interesting is you can't, in the aging and the fermenting process, you cannot ferment bad tobacco and make it better, but you can make really good tobacco worse.
Yep.
And it's as simple as the temperature as it's going through that fermentation process. When it gets up around in its second phase of aging, when it gets to around 108 degrees Fahrenheit, if it keeps going and gets to 109 and 110, it could be the difference. It could just literally ruin it. It's like burning toast.
That's really wild. And once you start seeing the difference in temperature to single degrees and holding them there, it's a massive difference. And that really comes into the overall touch, is what we're talking about, from our senses, right? For me, one of the biggest things that I'm looking for when we're talking actually through sight is you can look at a cigar that is very uniform on the edges, And that's going to tell me a couple of different things. If you see something that looks like there are little holes or indents, that's going to indicate that really from a sight perspective, you can basically from a hole in a divot perspective know that that it's inconsistent in the amount of tobacco being used, which means it's going to turn into basically something's not going to burn right, it's not going to draw right, it's not going to taste right.
So some of the things that I'm just going to look at is how shiny is the cigar. If it's a very shiny cigar, then that is an indicator that the wrapper is going to have a lot of oil in it. So it's going to have a little bit more shine to it. When it comes to touch as one of our senses, we start touching the cigar a little bit. One of the things that I do is just kind of gently squeeze around the cigar, and I'm feeling if there's any pockets. If there's a pocket, then that's an area where the tobacco has not filled that area. So as the cigar burns, the heat will fly through that area and a lot of times cause that cigar to run or burn faster in that particular pocket.
And that is a huge worry for our perspective. And as a matter of fact, we had a line that was trying to come in here. It was a guy we've known for a long time, and he was putting pressure on me. He said, well, why aren't you bringing them in? And I just felt it, and I said, feel this. And he felt it, and your thumb could basically touch the other side.
Almost touch the other side.
And I said, you feel this, right? I said, do you think I'm going to let this in my humidor? That was the last time he ever pushed for it, because he knows quality and consistency in the roll. To your touch, you can feel whether or not that cigar is going to smoke consistently and give you what you're looking for.
Right. So as you get into some of the wrappers, now on this Plasencia Alma de Fuerte.
The Daily Ash, how's it from Hawaii?
Oh, the G'day? Well, first of all, they do this. No, they do this.
Yep.
And it's Maloa Hola, Walla Walla, good day, mate. Just like that.
Yep, feels just like
he feels like he's at home right now.
That's it. Also, Rodney Smith is saying, putting together some stuff for business and bourbon. Look, I've said it a million times. I'll say it another million times. Join SSW. Those guys are the next level. Yep. They have some cool shit going on.
What they are doing is outstanding.
You were talking through.
So yeah, I'm starting to talk, as you feel the wrapper, you'll start noticing that some wrapper, typically the Maduro wrapper, is that tobacco itself, the Maduro wrapper. Maduro is not a wrapper. It's not a plant. They don't grow a Maduro leaf. What they do is they take typically higher leaves on the plant and they age it longer and hotter. And that heat is what's causing that cigar, that tobacco, to get darker. It's going to get richer. It's going to get more dense. Now, there are some factories that try to trick that with the old black water trick.
You remember?
I remember the black water trick.
I was just talking about that with Ted up front. I remember, just so you know, there's a way, they call it oiling, or they call it pressing, or there's a lot of things that they call it, but it's legitimately a horse trough filled with black water that it looks just
It looks like ink.
Looks like death.
Yeah.
It looks, and so they'll take that and they'll manufacture Maduro wrappers.
Dunk it, and pull it out. So there'll be times if you're smoking a cheaper Maduro wrapper that'll start to flake off, and you'll start seeing the natural color of the wrapper come through. So typically, when you're looking at something that's a darker wrapper that has sat in that aging process, that pilon, for longer. And typically in the second phase of fermentation. There's a first phase and a second phase where they'll stack it a little higher and let that heat build up. So it's, if you imagine a compost pile, as soon as you scrape the top layer away, that the grass or the leaves are warmer underneath there. And it's because those leaves are actually fermenting.
And cooking it down.
Cooking, exactly.
Now, as we're talking about some senses, maybe hop over into a sense you may not think about as much when smoking a cigar, drinking a bourbon, or going through any ritual, which is hearing in your sound and what you perceive.
Right.
What are some ways from a hearing perspective that people should maximize their experience?
I'll tell you, this is where you're kind of, putting a razor blade in your hand, right? There, if you go too much, you can create damage to the wrapper. But if you have a cigar that's in your humidor and maybe you're concerned that your humidor is not keeping everything up to speed, as you put this next to your ear and kind of press in just barely.
Don't do this with a lit cigar.
If you hear any kind of cracking, then put that cigar back and make sure that that cigar is getting the humidity that it needs, because that's one of the things, the sense that you can get. Also, you know, you see it in movies when somebody lights a cigarette and they have that thing close and slow motion, you hear it crackling and stuff. That's typically a sign that you got some drier tobacco inside there and you're getting kind of those clicks and pops.
So let's stop for just a second. If you guys have questions as you're watching, please feel free. We're paying attention down here. Jim Trader trying to stay on, but round 8 of chemo is fighting hard today. Everyone give some love to Jim Trader. He is going through round 8 of chemo. This guy, he's the man.
He is the man. He's fighting his ass off, and we're behind you 110%. And we cannot wait until you can get back in here and start smoking cigars again.
Absolutely. That is a bit of information that I didn't understand, is just finding the right tonality. And what you can actually do is take one of the lesser expensive cigars in your humidor, let it sit out for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
If you want to know the difference, just take something straight.
And you'll hear it crack. Now, what's cracking is the wrapper. So odds are once that thing heats up on the inside, it's going to pop. But it's just one of those things if you start thinking about the senses. Then, of course, the next sense is going to be taste. And a lot of that taste is going to come from smell. So as we start thinking about the smells of the cigar, you know how many times I've seen people pick up a cigar in the humidor while it's in the cellophane? Oh yeah, this is good. Well, they didn't smell anything but cellophane. But when you're going to smell a cigar, this is really key, particularly if you bought some cigars. I won't say you bought them on Cigar Bid. Let's just say you did. That's a cigar you definitely want to really put into your nose and smell that. If you get any burning sensation in your nose, you want sweet, you want like a mild hay smell, you want something that's sweet. But if your nose is burning, then at that point, understand we were talking about fermentation. There is a phase in that fermentation process where it's kicking the sickness out of that tobacco, which comes out in the form of ammonia. And companies will put tobacco into production before it's done cooking.
And the best way they do that, if we look at the big guys have a lot of tobacco that is not flavorful, but they got to use it. So they'll put that in. And a great way the way that you cook a steak in the microwave essentially is what you're doing is you have a cigar that has no taste, it has no sensation. Well, you have two different sensations when we talk about tasting something and feeling something. You have flavor, and then you have the sensation.
Right.
So what you can do is you take that flavorless, odorless shit cigar, and then you take undercooked tobacco and put it in there. It all of a sudden adds an element of aggression to it.
Right.
Although on your palate it may feel like flavor.
Right.
That's
the thing is, as you really get into the smoking and gaining the taste and flavors out of a cigar, there's two different things. And heat can screw all of this up, by the way. Heat just ruins flavor. I use the analogy, what's hot soup taste like? It tastes hot until it cools down before you get an opportunity to really taste that. Or hot coffee, same thing. All you taste is hot. But in this case, what we're really looking for is there is a sensation that comes in, and that sensation can be something that is enjoyable, that little bit of tingleness that comes in on the center of your palate. That's really critical. But then there's that flavor, picking up those flavor notes. And that really leads into what I think is the most important part as we start talking about the actual tasting of cigars.
Fire that up first. For those of you who are just joining us, this is Cigars 101. Admittedly, a much better show than it was last week.
So far.
You're killing it.
Yeah.
I love to see this fresh new information coming from you as you're reading through this handbook. For those who are watching, we do this every Tuesday at strictly 7:30. We haven't missed a deadline yet.
No, haven't made a deadline.
This hasn't worked for years. But just want to say thank you for everyone who's taking your time on a Tuesday evening to join us. We're running through how to make the best of your senses and how to take into cigar smoking all 5 senses of what you're doing. We've talked through the sound and hearing if it's dry. We've spoken through the feel and understanding where there's dead pockets. Now we're kind of rolling ourselves into the taste.
We're really talking about taste. And this is something, and again, this applies to the spirits drinkers, it applies to the wine drinkers. It really, if you think about it, applies to just the way we normally eat. But, so let's talk a little bit about your palate. Your palate, your tongue, right? So on the very front part of your tongue, it picks up sweetness. On the side of your tongue, on the outer edge, it's going to pick up salt on both sides. So when you think about food, if you have food that's bland, a little bit of salt seems to help it, right? So in this case, salt is a very important part. Then behind that is sour. It will pick up the sour notes. It'll pick up the elements of citrus, tomato, things like that. And then at the very back, just on its way down your throat, at the very back is bitter. So the more that I learn about pH, and the more that I learn about how important pH is to everything that we do, whether it's food or any of those elements, the simple fact of the matter is that pH in foods or pH in tobacco can greatly swing things. Case of pH, if it's rated 1 to 10, a lemon would be a 2, and that's going to have a very high pH level. It's going to really light up the sour part of your palate.
Low pH level, acidic.
Very acidic on the lower end. What's at a 2? Milk is a 6.5. So you've got this. Tomatoes are a 4. So when you start talking about things that when you're smoking something like a cigar that's got a higher pH level in most cases, if you have something that's on the opposite side of that, then let's say you had something lemon or you had something tomato, and then you smoke a cigar that's a pH level of maybe an 8, those two are going to act against each other and fight on your palate. That's why it's very important that you cleanse your palate before you either drink a spirit or before you smoke a cigar, or even between cigars, because some cigars the pH is different because of the soil that it's grown in.
Yeah.
So it is a huge impact to the whole process.
And if we talk about it, that's really the biggest difference of what makes tobacco from Nicaragua different than Dominican, different than Cuban, is really soil composition and pH. And I know we're starting to really talk about
we're getting nerdy, but the one thing is, I've been going through this Tobacconist handbook. What it is it's tobacconists talking to tobacconists. And so the whole thing that we've focused on is how do we adjust that so that we can translate this into something that we're going to all understand. And I think that that's where you start to think about certain things. So let's just say we're eating a food like a chocolate chip cookie. Chocolate chip cookie has butter, it has sugar, it has salt, and it has chocolate. And when you have chocolate, if you've ever had dark chocolate that's very bitter, it's going to sit at the back of your palate, and it's going to really light that area of your palate up. In the front, if it's milk chocolate, and you've got that sugar that's going to get picked up on the front, and then on the back, on that back side, you're going to pick up that salt, and then any sour elements that are inside there. The one thing that's interesting is, at the very back, what you're picking up is alkaline. And when you have the alkaline at the back of your throat, you start thinking about what are things that have a very high level of alkaline. Well, one of those things is like tonic water, for example. Tonic water will light up at the very back of your throat. But if you've ever smoked a cigar where it kind of feels like you got a cold and you got a scratchy throat, the other thing that has alkaline in it is ammonia. The ammonia that's coming off that cigar is what's causing that scratching. So it's a sensation, it's not a flavor, and typically, now if it's lighting up the back of your palate, that is the bitter zone.
It's so interesting that you're going through this, and it's very important because what you've talked about, salty, sweet, sour, bitter, all sit on the outside, right?
On the outside.
And mine are different, and I think this is where they talk about where exactly everyone's taste buds. I think that's being contested where, yes, it's all in agreement, so it sits on the outside, but the palate sits on the top. And what I've noticed since losing flavor is I have everything on the side, but that final sense, the umami, And in Spanish, sabroso, which just basically translates to flavor, is gone.
Yep.
And so it does help understand when you smoke a cigar, and I notice this because I notice this with as we're testing new cigars that are coming back into the humidor, and I would challenge everyone who's at home, is stop worrying about what it tastes like, because it's not really important. And you can chase so many things. Oh, it tastes like lemon ciabatta bread. Oh, it tastes like this, that, the other. That's cool and it's fun, but stop worrying about that, because that, when speaking with real master blenders, they do not care about the flavors.
No.
They only care about, is the tobacco giving you the sensation that it should?
Right. And you hear about balance. So we always talk about how people like, when you have a food that's sweet and salty, that is the thing that just people really crave on a regular basis, because they want to light the front of their palate, they want to light the side. The umami is the center of the palate. One of the things that is like the ultimate umami is the seaweed wrap on sushi. That's just considered umami because there's nothing else that tastes like it. It's just very unique. And you'll notice that when you get the flavor of that, it is a very unique flavor. It's very noticeable, and it's different. It also, the center of your palate picks up savory. But I think that one of the things that's so important as you smoke a cigar is balance. If you smoke a cigar that just lights the front of your palate, just hits that sweet spot, but you're not getting anything on the sides, you're not getting anything in the middle, or worse yet, you're getting that hot spot in the back of your throat, you think about, why do chocolate chip cookies taste so good? Because it's perfect balance. It gives you sweet, it gives you salty, it gives you this
everything
this
at the
flavor.
same time.
Everything is right there, and that's why it's something that is so desirable. So with a cigar, it's just a master blender wants to entertain your whole palate, not just a part.
So
of the palate.
here's something that I learned, and Tony Gallant coming in from BC.
Good day, mate.
Good day to you. So Dave Simpson, what's up? What's happening, everybody? Going
Myers
through Cigars
is in.
101. Give this a share if you're watching on Facebook. But here's what's really interesting. You're talking about cigar balance. Jeff Hogan, owner of Crux Cigars, was in, and he mentioned almost no cigars live in balance. And I was almost disheartened to hear that, because he has this incredible ability to blend. But for all of you whiskey drinkers out there and just spirits enthusiasts and all the way through, it's okay, because you can create your own balance. If there is that cigar that hits right in the front of your palate, or just on the side, or wherever it is, don't worry about chasing, ooh, this tastes like chocolate, I'm gonna find a cigar with chocolate. Find what the balance is. So when you're drinking your whiskeys, when you're drinking coffee, pay attention to what happens on your palate there, so you can counteract that. If you have a cigar that's hitting just the front, well, let's find a rye, let's find something that sits just on the side.
Yep.
Now, once you just hit all of that at the same time, now we have that element of being leathery, that element of being in balance.
Right.
You create the pairing of balance of sensations.
Right. That's such a great point. And there's two types of pairings. There is a what would be considered an equal pairing. An equal pairing would be, you smoke a cigar, it's got that rich dark cherry, it's got that really dark rich flavor, and then you pair it with a Merlot, and the two talk to each other just perfectly. Cigars and coffee, they both light up the same parts of your palate, so you get this natural. But what you're describing is called contrasting pairing. So the example would be a grilled cheese and tomato soup. So you've got this cheese that's a dairy product, you got bread, it doesn't have a lot of pH, and it's all sitting in that 8 and 9, but you got the tomato that's sitting at 4. But when the two are together, they contrast each other perfectly.
And it goes into, when I was doing that wine tasting, the gentleman said, how do you make watermelon sweeter?
Salt.
Put salt on it.
Yep.
You lock down and satisfy that part of your palate. and then it allows the rest to come to life. And do that. And do that if you're smoking cigars with us now and you have a drink. Take a puff, then take a drink. Now, take a drink and then take a puff. And see how much different that is, because you hog the palate on one way or the other.
Simpson will remember this. Trader will remember this. Anybody that's was drinking beer in the 70s, and you saw it when you went into the where all the old guys sat at the bar and had been there sitting there all day. There was always a salt shaker on the table because they were drinking cheap ass beer and they would put salt in it.
Really?
And the salt would cause it to kind of foam back up. But I'm sure you guys remember that. But I remember you get cheap beer, you just put a little bit of salt in it.
Really?
And it does the same thing as like salt on watermelon. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize. I always thought there was a salt so it didn't stick to the napkin.
That'd work too. But this, now, I'm smoking a Plasencia, and their whole pitch on this cigar is that it's all organic tobacco.
Jerry Vaughn says, I find that, this is about the same time you were saying that, I find that salt on my beer will overpower the salt palate, and then my smoke cancel that out, as you're saying now.
Yeah,
so
and
basically,
and which happens. There are certain cigars. There's a cigar from Crown Heads called La Coalición. It's a beautiful cigar, but that particular cigar, when you smoke that and you're drinking coffee, the flavor of coffee and tobacco get like moved out of the way, and then you get all this background notes, and it's just really, really cool. So there's certain cigars. You can tell your story about the tequila that you guys drank with Black and Gold from Principal, and it tasted like what?
yeah, like Reese's peanut butter
Reese's
cups.
peanut butter
and
cups.
I'm curious if anyone who's watching, drop in the comments, drop your favorite pairing of what you've done. I'm really curious, and it's cool. Jerry Vaughn drinks beer with cigars, and I enjoy beer with cigars quite a bit. I would much rather go there. But what are some of the pairings that you've seen that may be similar? Would you say they're similar, like pairings, and then contrasting pairings?
Yeah, I mean, you probably have more contrasting pairings than you do where all of a sudden the cigar and the drink taste better. Well, when you do them together, I think there's odds are there's going to be more contrast pairing where you have a cigar and you have your spirit and they both still taste good. It's when you get that pairing where you're so far off that it's like eating tomato before you smoke a cigar. You still have that pH is still sitting on your palate,
yep.
And it's going to trigger a bitter experience altogether.
So Trader goes Scotch and an Atabey. Sean Rad said, used to put spicy V8 in my beer, but it destroyed the flavor of the cigar. Cream soda, and yes, actually, JP, solid. Cream soda and that Dr. Pepper cream soda is awesome with about everything.
Yep.
That's good on you, JP. It's like ranch in a cigar. That's kind of what that cream soda is, right?
Yeah,
it's just
super
super creamy.
I do Diet Dr. Pepper because I like the cola gets neutralized by the tobacco, and then it leaves that cherry out in the forefront. So it's really good.
And I really like, from a day-to-day perspective, I like Coke Zero because it's lighter, it's not as sugary, so it doesn't stick on your palate, but it just has that little effervescence to get rid of it.
Right.
So
the other thing is and I know Rodney's watching, and Rodney is the only person on the planet that cannot retrohale. But there are actually two methods of being able to smell the smoke, and they always draw the analogy where if you hold your breath, we had to do this when I was a kid, taking half the cough syrups that were on the market because you just couldn't gag these things down if you tasted it. So you'd hold your breath or you'd plug your nose. So scent is so critical. So there are two ways, Rodney, I just learned this in our handbook, two ways to in a sense retrohale. One is the traditional. Why don't you show how to do that?
that last little bit, as I'm exhaling, the last little bit, I'm just basically taking my tongue, putting it to the roof of my mouth, pushing that out through my nose. Now be careful, little by little work your way into that, because with the Nicaraguan cigar, This is the main difference. You'll know it's Nicaraguan if you're lit up.
Right. So the other is the function of just letting the smoke roll up your nose. And I noticed that Darren does that a lot. And that is this.
Oh, that's interesting. It's
So
completely
when you
different.
let the smoke come out, and once it starts rolling up the front of your face, just breathe a little bit of that in, and you'll notice that your palate volume just cranks up.
That is much more effective, I think, in
Yeah.
here than going out and pushing it through.
And I think, and maybe it's, I don't know if you're still in the process of tasting it when you retrohale it, and then you got to connect those two dots. But this is you're tasting it and you're releasing it and then you're smelling it. But try this at home, kids. When you're smoking this and you let that roll up and just take a little bit of it in, notice what happens with your palate. It just lights up.
That, I never thought about that. That is super interesting. And the way that it enters your palate, the way that it enters through your sinuses, it kind of sits up in there versus passing it through. It's much more effective. I think this is an indoor way to do it, if
Yep.
I'm being honest.
Yep. I think it's a way that Rodney could do it.
Jerry Vaughn, Stars 2, Blackhawks nothing. We have Derek Coleman in. Yes, Jerry Vaughn, don't want to retrohale the Punisher jalapeno popper. Love them. Got used to retro them. That is, you should just take your cigar, dunk it in nitro fuel, then retrohale it.
Yeah, do that.
I think that's about the same. Mark Meyer, back in. Welcome in. Everyone, thank you for taking your time on a Tuesday to join us. Cigars 101, I have got to say, I am super refreshed and very excited about just this wealth of knowledge that you've been taking in. I can see there's a lot of things we pick up.
Yeah, there's, for a lot of this, this book is somewhat basic in that it is, it's a lot of it I already knew, but there's a lot of little elements in there. I nerd out on the pH and those things, and when you start realizing that the pH in the soil in different regions of the different growing regions, and which areas have different types of pH levels in them, that dramatically impacts things. Cuba is one of those areas. And one of the things that I found very interesting about the Cuban growing region, there's one area that's really kind of renowned in Cuba where they grow the tobacco. They get 66 inches of rain per year, but only 2 inches during the growing season. So it's kind of like the soil and everything just gets hammered and saturated. And then through the growing season, it's just pulling it out. Now, I think they do have to go in and irrigate. So I think a big reason why a lot of the Cuban stuff has kind of fallen off over the last few years is because they're no longer being subsidized by the Soviets. And so when you lose that cash, you lose the ability to
Continuously.
continue that stuff. Because there are some crops that just didn't come in. And a lot of what that is wrapper crop that didn't come in. So
I see JP's comments are most certainly falling off here. I mean, it really started strong, but it's making its way back to JP. I think you're exactly right. When it comes to the overall different way to taste, it's really cool. I'm reading through this here. It says, here's just an interesting snippet. If 10% of cigarette smokers in the United States converted to cigars, it would double the size of the cigar industry.
it's incredible.
Imagine that. I mean,
I think cigarette smokers just they're obviously addicted to the nicotine, and they're absorbing that nicotine in their lungs, and that is the quickest way to get what they want. And it's also got a very high concentration of nicotine. Ours is nicotine is absorbed into our bloodstream through our mouth, and then it's let go. So nicotine actually takes on more of in our body, acts more as caffeine does, and will just kind of give you a little bit more of that buzz that you get.
It is really interesting. I've had a lot of people who have come in lately that I've started breaking down the way I speak with them and identifying which cigars are best. And as we look at the cigars themselves and the nicotine content.
Too much.
Yeah, don't go Don't
Yeah, I
inhale
kind
that.
of pulled that
That's
off.
what's going to happen if you inhale. But when I look at that, and you're talking about nicotine, a strong cigar doesn't necessarily have to be super, let's just say a full cigar doesn't need to be super high in nicotine.
No.
And
actually with age, a lot of that nicotine goes away.
so the nicotine is actually breathing its way out. It is going to make it is going to leave the cigar itself, where you can see with some of the more vintage cigars that we have in the humidor, if you smoke the Buteros, you smoke something from 2001, 2005, you'll see that there's a ton of flavor that still remains, but there will be virtually no buzz, no nothing. It's just this nice, relaxing experience, but it won't ring you, it won't buzz you up in the same way that a new, fresh one will.
So what's interesting, I just lit an Alma Fuerte from Plasencia, typically known as a much fuller bodied cigar. But as I bring this in versus the other Plasencia here, which is called what?
Alma
del Campo. This one, to me, that in that umami area of my palate is delivering more acidity. And so I feel it more. So that's that difference of feeling versus tasting. And a lot of guys that are, if you look at this cigar and go, I can get done with that in 45 minutes, you're just smoking it too fast and you're going to get it hot. And then all you're feeling is heat. You're really not getting that flavor.
Yep, exactly. And that really turns into heat kills all flavor. Keep it as cool as you can. Slow down. Take your time. And here's something that is definitely worth a run. The next time you're in the lounge or wherever you are, try lighting with a Cedar Spill. And why you would do that, what I mean is there's just little sheets and little sticks of cedar. Mm-hmm. When you light that, what you're going to notice is the flame that comes off of there is much cooler than what you're going to get with this blue flame torch that comes ripping out of there. You're going to get a much cooler light, which means you're going to get more flavor immediately. And I actually did an A/B test on that on Saturday. The amount of flavor you get with a Cedar Spill, because it's cooler, is substantial. Mm-hmm. It really is cool. And it also makes the lobby smell great, so please ask us to do that.
The other thing too, and I know a lot of you guys have a large collection of cigars. I know JP has more than 2 left. But smoke 2 cigars at the same time. These 2 cigars come from the same factory, and they couldn't be more different. And in the end, you're going to smoke something that feels good to you and has a flavor that's not too abrupt. But this is all such high quality tobacco, whether it's Plasencia or whether it's Crux. The Regis is from Plasencia, the Cavalier is from Plasencia in Honduras. They just do a great job in the way that they age and ferment their tobacco. So you're not gonna get that intense pepper that's gonna roll over and hit that sour side of your palate. And that's what, while it says sour on your palate, that's the area that gets ignited by anything that has more of a peppery note.
Yep.
So, and there's subtle white pepper, there's going to be black pepper, there's going to be red pepper, there's going to be those peppers. And what we've seen is that the big box guys, I'll call them the big box guys, are taking tobacco that's really low on the plant, typically doesn't have a lot of flavor. It's the cheapest that you can buy by the ton. It's by far the cheapest. But what they'll do is either, like you said, they either throw tobacco in it that's not done, or they'll throw some tobacco in it that is traditionally going to kick off more pepper. So then as you smoke that cigar, what you realize is they're really covering up a bad cigar. It's no different than, putting too much salt on it or trying to trick you into thinking that, you put sauce on a steak. Well, if it was a good steak, you wouldn't put any sauce on it.
So I want to back up because we are talking about maximizing your senses when you're smoking a cigar. What I've noticed once I get into the cigar, and I don't know if you guys are the same way, but I find myself when I'm really enjoying a cigar, I really bring the sense of sight back into it. Mm-hmm. Like for instance, I'm just staring at the ash of this cigar, and I'm watching the blue smoke roll off of there, and it turns into this really cool experience of watching it transform. And I think that is maybe a hidden element. And I noticed that when we do the Wednesday wind down, you end up just looking at the cigar and watching it just kind of melt away.
Well, and some people ask, why is the smoke blue coming off the cigar, and why is it white or gray when you blow it out? And that's mixing that cigar smoke with the carbon dioxide that you're releasing. So that's what's taking the blue out of it. Right now we're getting blue because we're really burning oils at that point. So
that's why this is substantially. And as you're saying that,
bluer.
I'm exhaling here and seeing how much more blue.
Watch.
Now you're not going to see much of a difference on your end, but really take a look at that. If you're smoking a cigar and you're somewhere that isn't super windy, just take a peek. Yeah, just super white versus the blue. It's completely different.
Completely different. But both of these cigars are excellent, but both of the cigars taste different. And that's why I feel sorry when somebody just gets stuck in a rut and they're like, nope, I smoke a Fuente short story and that's all I'm going to smoke. Man, you're missing a whole bunch. Mm-hmm. And for the spirit guys out there, imagine just living your life drinking one spirit and that's it.
Yeah, that's it forever. Man, this is...
So as really normal, cool. We're also here to answer any questions for you guys. We've had a lot of people ask to get in this week. Again, if you tell people to join Cigar Newbies, it's a safe place to go. There was I was actually on a group today called, I think it's called C2, which is a cigar group, and a guy asked a simple question. Has anybody seen that Vault Tech humidor? Right? I'm thinking about getting one, but it looks cheap online. So I quickly said, no, this thing's made out of metal. It's a gun safe. It is really high quality. So other people are going, I love mine. The thing is awesome, blah, blah, blah. People are taking pictures of theirs and everything else. And then one guy goes in and goes, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And I'm like, that's why you join Cigar Newbies. Because that guy isn't going to stick around in the group much longer.
Yeah, and it really
We're just not looking for the guy that just is sitting there a troll, just waiting to trash talk somebody that's just asking a simple question. My response to him was, he asked a question, not your opinion. Because everybody's got, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one.
Yep, and they all stink.
But, the thing is it's just one of those things where, man, if you like it, if the cigar pushes your buttons, we're never going to tell you not to try that, but we may tell you to try something that's in that same lane, but that you're going to pick some other things up.
Yeah, and really when it comes to newbies, as we take a step back and look at that, the reason why we want to utilize this is we need it to be a culture where people are growing on it, and people can grow and you can utilize the culture of, yes, maybe that works or maybe it doesn't, but unfortunately you have to police a little bit.
Yep.
And if someone's deal is this the stupidest thing ever, you're the whatever it is, a personal attacks and certain things, it's important. It's like in the lounge. You have to be really vigilant when it comes to it. And for those of you who are on newbies, keep going, keep it going, keep bringing people in. It's an area where people aren't going to make fun of you if you get duped for buying a bad Cuban. You know what? You're right. Jerry Vaughn is exactly right. Dicks are dicks. Cigars are gold.
JP goes, how dare someone have an opinion? I think there's probably a Facebook page that could be created, which is just your opinion about cigars, and it's just a bunch of people sitting out there telling everybody else that they're stupid and that what they're smoking is wrong.
Yeah, I think Skip's running it.
Yeah. I don't think he's a member, so.
No.
No,
but I think it's really cool from a tasting perspective. So what type of tobacco is a black and gold? I've found that I like that better than anything else I've had. What other cigars would you compare it to? So just to give you an idea, Frank, the tobacco inside of I'm assuming you're talking maybe Cochon Blanc, but
he's talking black and gold.
Okay, so this is the Principal Cigars black and gold. The beauty of that is it utilizes tobacco from the Dominican, utilizes a little Peruvian, utilizes tobacco from all over the place.
With a Mexican San Andreas wrapper.
That's the key. And here, if we can talk nerdy for a second. Mexican San Andreas, especially Mexican San Andreas Maduro wrappers, are this very rich, very robust, great flavor, but usually doesn't pack too much of a punch. And it becomes very enticing for guys and blenders to take something that has a ton of flavor and underneath that put power. So you get a ton of flavor, but you get a ton of power underneath that. What I love about what Darren does, what Oscar Valadares does, is he takes this very flavorful wrapper and finds elegance to go underneath it. So you get this overall all-encompassing, chocolatey, earthy, beautiful taste, but something that lives under there with your contrasting style of pairs of tobacco in there.
That it's that peanut butter and jelly thing. It's two things that taste totally different, but when together, it's got a whole different thing going on. Peanut butter and chocolate, all of these things. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm going to challenge you guys to smoke a cigar tonight, if you can. I know if you're up in Canada, might be a little nippy outside. But I just noticed as I'm sitting here, those areas of my palate, the sour and the sweet and the salty, are all just kind of tingling. I'm not getting a whole bunch of stuff going on in the center, but I'm just getting that little bit of tingle that's come in as I've gotten a little deeper into the cigar. So, those are things that, there are some cigars like Aladino. The Aladino Corojo cigar is a beautiful cigar, but it's like you just rinse your mouth out with salt water in a good way. It's got just almost more emphasis on the salt side.
Tell me, maybe it was just because you're talking about that, but that's what I'm getting there. And JP says when he draws a cigar, he puts the tongue to his teeth, so that way the smoke kind of rolls onto his palate. And that's what I was just doing there. I just tucked my tongue down and let it roll on. That's a really good bit of information, right? It kind of flattened my tongue out and just let that smoke come on there. Much different.
But see,
experience.
now having a better understanding of where the salt impacts. So you're sweet in the front, salt, sour, and bitter in the back. So, and then that whole center part is there to pick up the rest of the flavors. That would be the nutty and the cedar and the oak and some of those things. But, everybody always talks about how coffee and chocolate and some of those are so easy to identify in a cigar. It goes into great detail about it's a function of getting the tobacco that hits a particular note that connects the dot in your brain of what that is. And I think that's when we talk about it every week on Cigar Newbies is pull slower than what you normally would. Pull in slow so that your brain has a chance to connect with your palate and start thinking about the flavors that are coming into your palate.
So let me ask you, because I'm really curious. I don't know it, but how long were you smoking cigars before you started identifying different flavors?
I probably haven't. It really wasn't until I started smoking with you guys that I switched gears from the utility of smoking a cigar on a golf course or whatever, or relaxing or whatever the case may be, to actually concentrating on it, because we were doing it together, and so we would talk about what we're getting, what are some of the notes we're getting. You could ask the same question of the spirits guys. At what point did you just go, man, this is good? What is causing me now to stop and really concentrate on the flavors that I'm getting? And that is really that difference. I think the guys that are out chasing a bundle of cigars for $39, their mindset is they're just going through the utility of smoking, but they haven't migrated to that point where, man, this is a perfectly blended meal, and I would just want to get the most out of it.
So it wasn't until you actually stopped and used the cigar to be a cigar until you could understand what it was doing for you.
Right.
That is interesting, because now we've started instituting different events and things.
But think about things that happen in your life. When you turn 16, you'll take any car that you can put a key in and that will roll. But as time goes on, you start looking for other things, better performance, better handling, whatever the case may be. You start looking for those things. So it's not necessarily just this, but you hear about these people that are foodies, that are really into it. Well, they've now flipped the switch. They're not just eating wings to eat wings. They're now going and they want to concentrate on all those components. And that's why these uber high-end chefs are giving you a little piece of this. You're never going to get full, but it's the best thing you've ever eaten in your life.
And that's funny because the meals that I enjoy the most are usually in Vegas after our trade show, because we're tasting cigars and we're trying to figure it out, and we're fighting through the previous cigars we smoked all day, and then we get to dinner, and then we see what is the meal doing for us. That is a huge point, and I think it becomes this. It turns you into
well, what it does is I think it changes your mentality, you know. And I say, unfortunately, I don't drink, but because I know that there's another universe out there that are things that I would be the same way if I was chasing spirits. I'd want to smell it. I'd want to look at it. I want to see that color. I want to see what impact it has on my palate. All of those things.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, I've even noticed I've been at certain meals and I'm just going out and having dinner, and I'll ask Megla, I'm like, are you getting, you know, more nutmeg? Are you getting more, you know, just things that would have just never come out of my mouth when I was in the business of driving through a drive-through and grabbing the most food I could possibly scarf down before I hit the street light.
Exactly. Tony, welcome in. Billy Harn just joined. Welcome in. Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, and I think there's probably an element of maturity of your palate, maturity of your life, where you understand, I need to stop and enjoy the cigar for what it is. I think there's a lot of things that are in that world of just stop.
Yep. And that's you know, we do the Wednesday wind down, which is something we would highly recommend if you're in the area to come in and sign up for it. But that's an area where we shut off most of the sensory elements. We have cool background lighting. We shut out all the lights. We just listen to music. No devices, which is why JP can't actually come into it, because he's a millennial and he can't put his phone down. But the fact is, when you can shut it all off and just jump in the cigar and really just say, I want to just focus on what's happening. I mean, I've smoked cigars like, I'll smoke an Atabey, and I think that the Atabey to me is the finest cigar I've ever smoked. But then when you do it, when you shut everything down and you just tell yourself, I'm just going to get in the cigar, I'm going to live here for an hour or two, you taste things you've never tasted before. Because you've now flipped that switch. You know, if you're thinking about a spreadsheet, I dare you to tell me what a cigar tastes like.
Exactly.
You know, it just won't happen.
And that is important in your cigar selection. So I think that's a good way to come all the way back to full circle when it comes to maximizing your senses when smoking a cigar, when drinking a spirit, when doing anything that you really enjoy, is just stop and listen, look, feel, be a part of your senses. And that's how you maximize it, is start thinking about everything that comes with it, make it a bit of a ritual, and have some fun.
Yeah, and I think every time we've done the wind down, and we do kind of the wind down from the wind down, and we talk about what our experience was for that hour and a half that we shut it down, everybody talks about how the cigar tastes different than they've ever tasted it before. And guys are smoking cigars that they normally would smoke. And all of a sudden they're tasting new things. So, you know, this is that step. If you're a cigar newbie, don't worry about taking a puff because somebody else said that they got black licorice and cinnamon toast. Don't worry about that. Just if the cigar comes in, it feels right, concentrate on the elements of your palate that are lighting it up. More importantly, when you're pairing it with something, what part of your palate is that? And are you the type of person that's looking for something that is going to be an exact pairing, perfect together? Or are you looking for that grilled cheese and tomato soup? What are you looking for, the contrasting pairing? One of the things we heard from Edgar, where I always thought you paired dark to dark, light to light, but he said no, dark cigar, light wine, dark cigar, light spirit, and vice versa. So he's going with that contrary pairing method.
Yeah, I think that's
What
it.
about you guys? How do you guys? Mark Meyer's watching. He is a sexy son of a bitch. That Mark Meyer is, but so, and Mark's got a great palate on the spirit side of things as well. So let us know some of the things that you guys are experiencing, and Brandon has talked about cigars and drinks that pair with things. Now, one of the things that you guys did with this Woodford barrel pick that you did with Someone Say Whiskey, you guys tasted like 3 regular Woodfords,
3 bourbons,
and you tasted 3
Ryes.
ryes. And Johnny Goodner, who has a phenomenal palate, he said that the worst rye was better than everything else. So, in his opinion, but what are some of the characteristics when you go? I mean, I realize this is a spirit conversation, but what do you pick up when you go to? I keep hearing about bananas, and
it definitely was. What's happening, Bill? Glad to have you in. Glenn, glad to have you in as well. When it comes to this, here's what I'll say. Here's what my takeaway is. As I get deeper and deeper and deeper into understanding cigars and what they're telling me, I can pick out the flavors. These guys are so deep into understanding what that rye, what that bourbon is saying to them, that they can start picking out the flavors. And I'm not there yet. So I just pay attention to how is this impacting palate. And that, to me, these guys, what I notice is, just like in the cigar world, as they pass the bourbons, they get into the ryes. Ryes got a little bit more body from what my experience has showed me there. It's got more going on, at least in this A/B test, or ABC of all the way through. It was really interesting to watch what happened. And the ryes were the winner for sure. But to me, I didn't know very much. And I just accepted that I'm going to go with what works best for me. And what worked best for me, I like the bourbons because I liked it to be a little bit smoother. I like that banana-y flavor to it. But I'm really curious on this side.
One of the things that it talks about as it relates to tasting, and I've had experience with this, there are some tobaccos, and a lot of them are grown in a particular region, the Dominican, that the pH level in that particular tobacco, when the pH level is lower, it's drying. And when the pH level is higher, causes you to more saliva to be generated. So there are a couple of cigars I could think of. Fratello is one that, as you smoke that cigar, it dried your palate out. And I think that, like JP is talking about mezcal and how it cleans the palate. In some cases, you may have something that is actually drying your palate out a little bit more, and that may clear the path for something else that's going to, be on the other end of the pH spectrum. That's going to cause that to increase a little bit more. But pH is definitely something that is.
So Mark Meyer says Yamasa. So I'll just back up here for a second. Yamasa is a beautiful wrapper, and it's one that was really put on the map by Davidoff. Vis-a-vis the utilization, and what's unique is Mark Meyer, you say Yamasa wrapper. No one uses Yamasa wrappers as wrappers. And we have Hendrik Kellner Jr. and Darren Chaffee to thank for that, because as a wrapper, it just doesn't work. As a binder, it works beautifully. The beauty of a Kushan Volant is the wrapper is a Yamasa. And putting that underneath a different wrapper is when that comes to life. Now this is really, they market it, and you'll see companies market this particular Yamasa, starts with a Y. They'll market that, but they're not actually using wrappers anymore with that tobacco. And
in fact, the Davidoff Yamasa is actually a Yamasa binder. It doesn't have any Yamasa wrapper, but there are a number of aviators that do Yamasa, but they're doing it as a binder as well.
Yep.
Koshan, it's on the outside.
Jim Trader, what is a cigar that's salty and cleans the palate? There are a couple of them that we have now. One, Aladino, is a great salty, clean your palate. On the other side, you have the Cease and Desist. That is a salty, tasty, smooth, beautiful cigar. That on a beach is great because that actually pairs beautifully
That
with
salt
different
air.
senses, because that pairs with the air you're breathing in.
Right.
And that is a really unique thing. Is if you're like what Frank is saying, if Frank is sitting out and he fires up smoking a brisket, and he's using mesquite wood or cherry wood or whatever, you're going to taste it. You're going to taste it. But you could essentially pair what kind of wood you're smoking and standing next to with a specific cigar.
And I'll tell you, you talked about a cedar spill to light your cigar with cedar. That if that doesn't prep your brain to start tasting more cedar, and a lot of that, that scent stays in your nose. If you go to a perfume or cologne counter, they have a little jar of coffee beans there, because once that state is in your nose, it's in your nose. So they have you take a sniff of coffee to basically clean the palate that is your nose, that sensory portion of your nose. But it is so critical that you are able to smell that cigar. And people will say a cigar indoors versus the same cigar outdoors, two totally different things. And the reason for that is, particularly for our friend that's in Fort Worth and the wind's blowing, it's blowing the flavor down the street.
Yep.
You don't get a chance to really enjoy that.
Exactly. You're not in there. Sydney joining us out there in Philly. What's happening? Get it with the cheese. Oh yeah, this is
cheese. That's right.
It's
cheese whiz.
Where you smoke, how you smoke, what time you smoke, what you eat. Every single thing will change your experience of the same cigar.
And I think a lot of times we'll talk about just having your mind right. And I think if you make the decision to concentrate on the cigar, you can do nothing but get your mind right, because you just got to shut it off. And it just changes the whole cigar experience. And the sooner you can have that cigar, then you jump both feet into the hobby and you start hunting for other flavors and other experiences that you're going to have.
Yeah, exactly. So, good job. That was
brilliant.
Good show. Good show.
We got Brooke in here. Brooke Elizabeth is in here.
Good evening. Cheers, cheers.
She's toasting with her drink. Any questions you guys have, we'd be happy to answer them for you. I'm sure tonight they're just they probably got notes out and they're probably doing.
No, this is great. So tonight what we ran through, just to give you an idea, we ran through tasting school, essentially what it is, maximizing your senses. Every week now that we are running through this Tobacconist University, we're going to take something that's a little bit different. As you'll see, this wasn't just us sitting here trying to pull something out, but a real solid show. I want to say thank you to everyone who took the time to join us. Watch this one again, because it is chock full of good information.
It is, and don't watch last week's.
Don't watch last week's.
No.
But with that, watch this one again. Share this with your friends. Thank you so much. We'll see you every Tuesday right here.
Right here, and then every Saturday at the shop. There is no information that comes out of that.
No,
shop.
there's cigar stuff.
Really?
Oh.
Usually it's in between. It's a full contact sport.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You should watch it. It's a blast. 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:10, Saturday morning. Catch us there, or just come catch us in the shop.
That's it.
That's it.
Glenn, you just missed a hell of a show, bud.
Thank you.